Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. Here to continue my end of the year list for 2021. We've gone through a lot so far. The album of the year.org's top 50 consensus list, my top 50 songs of the year, my honorable mentions, my 50 through 41, my 40 through 31, and my 30 through 21 albums of the year. So now we're on that penultimate stop, the albums 20 through 11. And trust me, there's a lot of really good ones that just missed that top 10. Honestly, I would say anything from like 18 on could have made the top 10 in some shape or form had I had a little bit more time with them. But first, before we get into them, just a few quick things I've been saying this whole entire time. Number one, this is an albums list. This is not a top songs list. I've already done that if you want to check that out and you haven't yet already. But just because a great song is on an album doesn't mean the album is cohesive on a whole. I look for the best albums. Second, and most importantly, if you haven't seen your favorite album so far on this list, it could be in my top 10. It could be in this video. It could be on previous videos. Or maybe I just didn't get a chance to listen to them because even though I listened to 230 albums, there's at least another 50 that I probably didn't get to listen to. So don't fret, just let me know what your favorite is and maybe I'll take a look at some other point in time. So without further ado, let's get to the 10 that just missed the cut. Starting with number 20, we have Liquid Tension Experiment with Liquid Tension Experiment 3. I'm going to give you a quick spoiler on this. There's a lot of progressive rock and metal on this one, and a lot of things associated with Dream Theater that's going to be in this particular realm. The people that worked with Dream Theater in particular had a hell of a year. And starting off with this one at number 20. This is the first Liquid Tension Experiment album in over 2 decades. You think we waited for a Tool album for a very long time? Try Liquid Tension Experiment. And they came back in full force. There's a lot of really great progressive songs that just from start to finish are just so much fun to listen to. Starting off at the top, we got Hypersonic, which sounds exactly what you think it is. Very, very fast-paced song, just breakneck speed, so great. But it also has a little bit of kind of the flares of like stream of consciousness from Train of Thought. It has like this, it builds kind of idea, and then like after this point of fastness, it eventually slows down and kind of goes in between those ideas. I love this as a starter. And then you have Being the Odds, which is more on just like this just straight away prog, but it has a beautiful chorus line and a hell of a guitar solo at the end. One of the best from Bertucci in a very long time. You also get The Passage of Time, which is just a killer song in general, start to finish. Fucking awesome. They also pull off a pretty solid Rhapsody in Blue, which is one of the first jazz songs in America. It is proggy, sometimes a little bit too proggy, but just the fact that they attempted that is a hell of an accomplishment. And then Keys to the Imagination, my God, is an amazing 13-minute closer that doesn't really overstay its welcome at all. I just love how this song continuously builds. First off, feeling a little bit like a spy movie song, but just as it goes on, how there's these gradual changes in the drum and guitar parts that just make you want to continue listening more to a 13-minute song. There's a couple of songs on here that don't really do much for me. Look at Evolution. Feels like a kind of a trancey interlude song. Chris and Kevin's Amazing Odyssey feels like a sludge song that isn't really interesting. And then Shades of Hope, beautiful song, but it sounds like something that I would hear in like a Asian restaurant where they're playing like smooth jazz ideas. Still hell of a comeback from this band. And I just hope that their next one comes sooner because I would love to see another one before all of them pass away. Number 19, we have Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, and the London Symphony Orchestra with Promises. This is one that I've talked about on the albumtheyear.org consensus list. And just like I said with that one and this one, I'm not going to give away the secrets. Like, this is a very interesting jazz album in that it's very minimalist from the start. Basically, you have at the beginning 4 chords from a keyboard that goes in and out very rubato. Just based on the movement, it kind of changes what goes on around it, be it Pharoah Sanders playing saxophone, or if it's him doing some scatting, or if it's the orchestra with some violins. It's seamless. It flows in on itself. There's 9 movements, and the way that they basically do this is it forces you to listen to it all at once, because the way that they cut between the movements is very sporadic. So it could literally be in the middle of a phrase and go on to the next movement. So that's all I'm going to say about this album. It's an experience that you have to check out for yourself. It's only about 40 minutes long, but it's worth it. It's a slow burn. I will tell you that. It is a very slow burn. There's definitely a lot of good stuff along the way, but the payoff is on those 7th, 8th, and 9th movement. If you can get to there, you'll understand why I didn't want to give this away, because it's a really cool experience in minimalist approach in terms of jazz, and I can't say enough about it. It's one that I probably won't be coming back to a lot, which is why it's a little bit lower. It could have easily been in the top 10, and it was at one point, but just because of its replayability, it's kind of hard for me to be like, yeah, this is a top 10 album. But it's still a really cool experience that you have to check out for yourself. Number 18, we have Lingua Ignita with Sinner Get Ready. This one was a little bit lower on my list with the first couple of listens, but as I learned more about the project of this and just let myself go into the music, I had to push it up because it is an experience. It really is. And I'm not saying it's a good experience. This is one that wears with you. This feels like the most deranged church experience that I've ever been a part of. It's not as heavy as Caligula. There's not really much screaming this time around. There's not a lot of metal ideas. This is more classical. There's a lot more organ. There's a lot more church music vibes. But that doesn't mean this is holy. If you don't know about the background of this, really quickly, a lot of her music comes from her past relationship with Daughter's lead singer Alexis Marshall, and the abuse that she went through both physically and mentally and emotionally. And it comes out in her music, and it's tough. It's really tough to listen to. Just like with the last Lingua Ignita album, this is not an easy listen. But if you can get yourself in that mindset, it's an experience worth having. It's a really, really tough listen, but one that is worthwhile if you can get past those caveats. And trust me, if you can't, don't listen to it at that point. If you don't have the emotional space for it, don't, because it is something that will wear on you. It's something that will stick with you after you listen to it. But it is worth a listen if you get the chance. Number 17, we have Trivium with In the Court of the Dragon. This has been a tough album for me to gauge because I really loved What the Dead Man Say. It was in my top 10 last year, and it was, I believe, my brother's second favorite album of 2020. And for good reason. It was a hell of a comeback. And this one is almost on par. There's a lot of just heavy hitting in your face songs. My brother says it's Shogun 2, and I don't necessarily see it. The variability on this album isn't quite there. It has a lot of great in-your-face songs, don't get me wrong. The Sword of Damocles is killer, and I just love how there's guitar solo after guitar solo after guitar solo after chant after chant. It has so much great energy. The Shadow of the Abattoir is what I would say the closest to a ballad on this album, and it just has so much great energy and a very good vocal range from Matt Heffy, where he's using his lower voice as well as some falsetto at times at the end. Fall Into Your Hands has some great drum work, and In the Court of the Dragon is a great starter after the instrumental. There's just, for me, a couple of songs in the end that don't hit as well as on What the Dead Men Say. Even though they're good, there's just one little thing that doesn't really get me as hyped as some of the other songs on the album. but still, it's a great Trivium album, and they have been on a roll since Silence in the Snow. Can't wait to see what else they do next. And also, I can't wait to see Matt Heffy's side project. Number 16, speaking about Dream Theater, we have Dream Theater and A View from the Top of the World. This is no hyperbole. This is their best album since A Dramatic Turn of Events, when Mike Portnoy left. This is their best album in over a decade. And yeah, that could sound like, yeah, well, it's only been a decade. But realize how many albums have come out since A Dramatic Turn of Events. We have the Dream Theater album. We have The Astonishing. We have Distance Over Time. So after 3 albums of like mediocre to good material, we finally get a great album from them again. This is just them at their finest, and it just goes to show that even after all these years, they can still put out great music. There's a reason why The Alien is up for Best Metal Song of the Year for Grammys. And it's a hell of a song. It's a great first track. Then just moving on, Invisible Monster has so much great power. Sleeping Giant is great. Transcending Time makes us feel like we're back in the kind of the early 90s, late 80s version of Dream Theater with its nostalgic vibes. Awaken the Master is great as well. And then, you leave the best for last, which is A View from the Top of the World, a 20-minute song from them, something that we haven't seen in quite some time from this band. And it honestly lives up to the billing. It honestly, from start to finish, there's a lot of really great music from them. And it just goes to show that after all this time, they can still churn it out with the best of prog has to offer. So yeah, you're not going to get anything like crazy new from this band, but you don't really have to. This is their 15th album. Like, what else were you expecting? At this point, I'm just looking for consistency, and this was very consistent and very good. So honestly, it's their best album in a decade, and if that doesn't sell you, let's put it this way: it's really close to being one of their top 6 or 7 best albums that they've had. So take a look, take a listen. It is kind of long. We're looking at an album that's about an hour and 10 minutes, but that's what you expect from this band. So check it out if you haven't already. All right, we got 5 more before the top 10. Starting off with number 15, we have For the First Time by Black Country New Road. I am doing this a little bit later than expected in terms of dropping this list. So I do know that unfortunately Black Country New Road doesn't have their lead singer anymore. I also know that they dropped out a second album that I'm very excited to check out. But this was a hell of a first album and a first introduction for this band. This is the best post-punk album that came out in 2021. This got critical reviews, and I can definitely see why. This whole entire album is only 6 tracks and 40 minutes, but it's worth every listen. Instrumental is a great way of opening up just the zaniness and over-the-topness that this album can offer. And then Athens, France shows off the lead singer's kind of zany style and spoken word / singing approach that just works really well for this band. I just really love the meshing of his lyrics as well as the music that is just ever changing. You think that you know what's going to come next for these songs, and if it's your first time listening to it, you're probably going to be wrong because they just change up styles throughout every single song. Athens, France is great. Science Fair is great. Sunglasses is over the top, especially when you get to the leave Kanye out of this part where he's finally finding his bravado in his sunglasses. I love the slow build of pace as it goes on that. And then Opus is a killer way of ending this album, having these moments of just over-the-top zaniness when it comes to strings and horns, and then this slow burn of vocals. I can't wait to check out their next album, and I'm going to be doing that shortly once all these videos are done, because trust me, there's a lot from 2022 that I'm really excited to check out, and this is clearly on the top of the list. Check this out if you haven't. Number 14, we have Arlo Parks with Collapsed in Sunbeams. Out of all these albums on this top 20 part, this one's probably the most simplistic. Some of these albums that you've seen before are already like just massive in terms of its length, in terms of its production, but this one is a little bit more subdued compared to all of them. But that doesn't mean that's a bad album. In fact, its subduedness works very well with the subject matter. A lot of this album is dealing with depression and honestly suicidal ideation. It's honestly really gorgeous at times. The very subdued R&B, alternative R&B mixed with these lyrics makes for some really transcendental and meditative songs that just get you right into that emotion. A lot of this stuff honestly feel like it could have been on some previous Radiohead albums. There's just so many good songs on here. Caroline, about a relationship that's falling apart and both sides feeling like the other's to blame, each of them just not understanding. The line, Caroline, I swear to God I try, I swear to God I try. That hopelessness and frustration and tiredness definitely comes off in that song. Black Dog, a beautiful song about a friend wanting to be there for the person that they care about and just telling them, hey, like, you just need to eat, you just need to do things to like feel better, using the idea of depression being a black dog, just wanting to chase it away so that this person could be better. The line, it feels so cruel what your mind can do for no reason. Like, I totally get that. There's a lot of beauty in this album. There's a lot of really depressive songs, but really relatable songs. And it just goes to show that like this is a debut album from her. It's gotten a lot of acclaim, and I can see why. And I'm so glad I checked it out. You know, it's this close to being in the top 10. It really is. Go check it out if you haven't. It's not that long of an album. It's pretty simple, but it's also really effective. Number 13, we have Transatlantic with the Absolute Universe. Now, I'm talking about particularly the Forevermore version because that is the extended version. We're talking about 18 songs, an hour and a half material. So yes, we're talking about a progressive album. I've checked out both versions. The Breath of Life is the abridged version. I prefer the Forevermore one. The cool thing about this one is there's 2 CDs, each being 9 tracks long, and each particular CD, the songs kind of flow in onto each other in a great way. So with the Breath of Life, you kind of miss the bridging of those songs. This album just feels enormous, and it just really, really works all the way through. You got Mitch Morse on here, you have David Portnoy on here, as well as a couple other stalwarts of the progressive scene. So you know that they work really well together, and just overall, this whole concept about dealing with the pandemic feels grand for such a topic that is so isolating. From start to finish, like, there's not really a bad song on here. Yeah, it can feel a bit long-winded at times because it is progressive. Yes, a lot of the ideas here is not something out of the ordinary that you would find on other progressive albums, but the journey itself is really worthwhile when you go on it. And once you get to the end with Love Made Away, once the lead singer feels more comfortable with the people around him and not feeling so much in his head, you feel that. You get to that point and you feel that you've completed this journey. And that's all I can say. Like, honestly, check it out. It's a wonderfully awesome progressive album. And if you have an hour and a half to spare, definitely check it out. All right, from one massive album to another massive album. Number 12, we have Between the Buried and Me with Colors 2. Yes, this is a sequel to their most critically acclaimed album. And even though it doesn't necessarily hit all the highs of Colors, it's not as intense. You definitely get a lot more parts where there are sung vocals. I really enjoy this. I enjoy the whole entire ride. There's just a lot of really stellar songs in them, like always. Fix the Error is this just really short but really fun and in-your-face, kind of punk rockish, hard rockish song that I really enjoy. Stare Into the Abyss is a great transition into the second half where you get this really good instrumental and some great vocals from Tommy. Prehistory is a little bit weird in its zany way, but I like the arrangement. On the second half, you get a lot more of the sung vocals, and I find a lot of them really good. The Futures Behind Us, Turbulent, Human as Hell is a great closer, 15-minute track. I will say there is one little weird part at the end, but for the most part, this is them at their best. And, it doesn't necessarily top Colors, but it's pretty damn close. So if you were a little bit worried about Colors 2, saw that and being like, oh no, more sequels, it's worth it. Check it out. And then number 11, and just missing the cut, and this is very close. This was really close. We got Little Sims with Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. Like I said on the album of the year, the consensus top 50 was not wrong with both Tyler the Creator and Little Sims being as high as they were, and even floating points. And yes, I haven't talked about Tyler the Creator yet, so that's going to be coming at some point. But it was a hell of an album from Little Sims. It was really cool to see her on the Salt project, but this is what I wanted. This album is so over the map with its diversity in sound, diversity in ideas, and it just makes for a hell of an album. And this one's also long, about an hour and 5 minutes, but it's worth it. The cool thing is you get a lot of different vibes all across the map. Stuff that feels a little bit more old school hip hop R&B. You get stuff that feels a little bit more African because of her descendancy, and especially when she's talking about her family. You get stuff that feels a little bit like Alice in Wonderland because the idea of this album is her going through her mind and dealing with everything that she has to about being a black woman in the rap game and the music industry, trying to live up to her parents' expectations because this was not something that they foresaw her doing, dealing with everything with her family, wanting to be an introvert, but also wanting to be with someone that she cares about. The fame, the wanting to be the best no matter what. You get these little skits that feel very Alice in Wonderland. It's her looking into her mental space and at some point finding the answers that she needs. And you get to that point of how did you get here, which is like her looking at her path and seeing that she's made it, but she still has some ways to go to fit her goals and her needs. Such a hell of an album. It really is. And just because it's not in my top 10 does not mean it's not an incredible album. It just means that my top 10 is just a little bit better. I honestly, it probably is also, if I had a little bit more time with this album, because it was one of the last albums I got to listen to from 2021, it probably would have made my top 10. But still, number 11 ain't bad. And that's where we're at. So that just means we got an incredible top 10 to talk about next time. And I'm going to be doing it with a special guest. You've seen them before, but it's going to be fun to talk to them again. But first things first, give this video a like if you enjoyed what I'm talking about. Also, let me know what you think about these particular albums or your favorite albums from 2021. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. That way I know that you enjoy what I'm doing and want to see more videos like this in the future. So coming up shortly will be my top 10. But until then, this is a Music Fan, and I'm signing off.